Yeah. Well, let's talk about what goes on in the brain, because in the case of alcohol, you have these people who are clearly severely addicted, and it's got something to do. You said we still don't fully understand intoxication. We know something that there are receptors in the brain that are set to respond to certain chemical compounds, that like a lock and key. That's the impression that I have.
Right.
So
Yes.
does it? So are the extremes? You talked about the disease level of alcoholism. Is it pretty much the same phenomenon in, say, fentanyl?
It's pretty much the same fentanyl, because the opioids, fentanyl is an opioid like compound, and it attaches to the same brain receptors as heroin and morphine and all the other powerful opioids. And so that's where it starts. And by the way, let me just say, I'm not the only one that is getting ready to say, let's move on. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, who funds 95% of the research on drugs in this country, their website says addiction is a medical disease. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, their website says alcohol addiction is a brain disease. Mm-hmm. The American Medical Association has said that addiction is a disease in 1965. Now we have a new medical organization, American Society for Addiction Medicine, 6,000 physicians around the country who do nothing but learn about how drugs cause addiction. And they certainly agree that this is a medical disease. And so, I mean, there's no reason, I don't think there's any threat to anybody's theory that you can, if you say this is a disease, this doesn't threaten anybody. So many people are afraid that if you call it an addiction, then you're letting people off for the responsibility of overusing their drugs. But there's 80% of the people who use drugs that you can blame that. You can say, okay, that's a choice. You deserve what I just said. But there's 20%, this is 20% across the board because it's different for each drug. Those people who use the drugs who become addicted that don't deserve, that type of decision. So in my book, I say it very, very clearly. The evidence now shows us we can have it both ways. If you look at one subset of people who overuse drugs, you can say, yeah, they're bad people. They shouldn't be doing that. They're totally responsible for everything that went wrong with them. Whereas there's this other group of people, which tends to be a minor group, who are addicted, who have a medical disease, a lot like schizophrenia, a lot like Alzheimer's, a lot like Parkinson's disease, where a chemical has gone wrong in the brain, and now they can't stop using the drug. It is truly an out-of-control drug use situation. However, these people are still responsible for the havoc that they cause in their families and in their neighborhood. If they kill somebody when they're under the influence of a drug, they're responsible for taking the consequences of that. They are not responsible for having gotten the disease in the first place. And that, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have used opioids, but some people don't have a choice. There's a lot of people who need opioids for pain control.
One of the things you write a lot about in the book is stigma, and I got the impression that you see stigma as a really big problem, kind of bound up in this whole addiction discussion.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head, and I can tell you read my whole book. That's awesome.
Thank you.